Professor. It's Mel, or Melissa Rosero, and this is my final presentation on Margaret Sanger and reproductive rights. So here's a really quick overview of what I'm going to talk about. So early forms of contraception, ancient Egyptians used acacia leaves, honey, and lint to create a paste put in the vagina. They also did that in Greece. The plant was so popular that it went extinct. Obviously, everyone has lived having sex since the beginning of time. On the top left, we have a bronze pessary. A pessary in this context is a way of blocking the cervix. The gap allows a rod to be placed into the cervix to hold the pessary in place. While it could remain in place during intercourse, I would imagine that would be very painful. Although condoms weren't popular till the 1900s, we have tales of Italian adventurers like Casanova writing about using lambskin condoms in the 1700s. On the left, here's a picture of partygoers blowing up condoms. On the right here, we have an IUC, which is a precursor to the IUD, and the IUC stands for an intracervical device. These tools became very popular in the 1800s. It's basically like an IUD, but it didn't fit all the way in the uterus. It kind of stuck out, which led to a lot of infections. Here we have a contraceptive sponge made out of rubber. It was basically a cervical blockage. On the right, we have a condom made out of animal gut membrane known as a Keikel, and Keikel condoms were effective against pregnancy, but not against sexually transmitted infections like AIDS. So right up here we have pro-race, which, if you notice the name, it reminds you of eugenics, race. That's not a coincidence. This was a spermicide that was used. This was a cervical cap right here made out of rubber. Here's an IUD, a very early IUD, which is what I have and I came and talked to you about. This is a glass one. This was made out of metal. This is a bone one. This is silkworm gut and silver metal. Made out of some really interesting stuff. Mine's done out of plastic now. Thought this was interesting. Blowing up condoms in 1935. So I just wanted to go over the Pope's stance in 1869. I mean, to no surprise, for him, abortion under any circumstance was gravely immoral, a moral sin, and that anyone who participated was basically excommunicating themselves. So here we have Anthony Comstock, and he was a driving force behind anti-obscenity and therefore anti-birth control statutes. He was around from 1844 to 1915. He's a devout Christian, believed contraceptives promoted lust and lewdness, and wrote and helped pass the Comstock Act. So in 1872, he introduced the anti-obscenity bill written himself at Washington. March 3rd, 1873, Congress passed the Comstock Law, and this law amended the Post Office Act and made it illegal to send any obscure, lewd materials through the mail, including contraceptive devices and information about birth control techniques. There's a picture of it right here on the right. It was really the first law of its kind in the Western world, and it's important to know that 24 states made their own versions of it. So Comstock Law's Act of Suppression of Trade in and Circulation of Obscene Literature and Articles of Immoral Use. I'm going to read it off really quick. Be enacted that whoever shall sell or shall offer to sell or to lend or to give away or in any manner to exhibit or shall otherwise publish or shall have in his possession an obscene book, pamphlet, paper, writing, advertisement, circular, print, picture, drawing, or any other representation, figure, image, honor of paper and other material, or any other cast instrument, or any article of immoral nature, or any drug of medicine, or any article whatever for the prevention of conception, on conviction thereof in any part of the United States, he shall be imprisoned at hard labor in the penitentiary for not less than 6 months, or more than 5 years for each offense, and fined not less than $100, no more than $2,000 with cost of court. So basically, for doing nothing, you could get charged $2,000, which is a shit ton of money. So most restrictive states were in New England. The most restrictive state in specific was Connecticut. The act of taking birth control was against the law. You could get in prison for up to a year for using it if you're a married couple. So there had always been people against the Comstock laws, but it really wasn't until Margaret Sanger from 1879 to 1966. It wasn't until her that Comstock laws were really challenged, and it came about through her pamphlet, Family Limitation. So she was working in the poorest parts of New York City, seeing a lot of people go through unwanted pregnancy and having to resort to back alley abortion. So she devoted her life to legalizing birth control and universal availability. Some criticisms are social Darwinism, scientific racism, and eugenics. I'll get into that in a while. I wanted to get into her accomplishments first. So in 1912, she started a newspaper column called What Every Girl Should Know. She stated that no woman can call herself free until she can choose consciously whether she will or will not be a mother. In 1914, she started a feminist publication called The Woman Rebel, which promoted a woman's right to have birth control. The monthly magazine landed her in trouble as it was illegal to send out information on contraception through the mail according to the Comstock Act. So rather than face 5 years in jail, she fled to England. In 1916, charges were dropped, so she came back and opened the first birth control clinic in the United States. Yay! Then she got arrested. Boo! So she was in jail for 30 days. Out of that arrest, however, resulted the 1918 Crane decision, which allowed women to use birth control for therapeutic purposes. In 1921, Singer established the American Birth Control League, a precursor to today's Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Super important. She served as president of Planned Parenthood until 1928. Wanting to advance her cause through legal channels, she founded the National Committee of Federal Legislation for Birth Control in 1929. She stepped out of the limelight for a while, went to Europe, Asia, and established International Planned Parenthood in 1952. Still seeking a magical pill, Singer recruited Gregory Pincus in 1950. She found financial support and then created the first oral contraceptive, which was approved by the Drug and Food Administration in 1960. And luckily, Singer lived to see another important reproductive rights milestone in 1965 when the Supreme Court made birth control legal for married couples in its decision in Griswold versus Connecticut. So now we're going to get into her criticisms. Her criticisms came out of social Darwinism and eugenics. The arrival and acceptance of Darwin's theory of natural selection changed America forever. It removed the basis for racial equality. If humans evolved from lower forms, then it meant that some were superhuman and some were more ape-like. And didn't take long for social Darwinist teaching to basically say that white people were on top and brown people on the bottom. It's important to recognize that Darwinism did not invent racism, but it effectively destroyed the philosophical foundation for objections to racism. The impact of these changes can be seen by the eugenics movement, or scientific racism became very popular in the 20th century. The central idea of eugenics was founded by Francis Galton, who was the cousin of Darwin. So the central idea of eugenics was that man should take control of his own evolution, and the state should decide that, which I thought was a little weird. He believed that natural selection could be replaced by human selection, as to ensure that those he defined as being more fit would be the ones left with the most offspring. Eugenics comes from the Greek word good birth. Galton argued that talent was hereditary and that society should take steps to ensure that the most talented members left numerous offspring and that its weak and foolish members left fewer to none. He expressed the hope that eugenics would become the religion of the 20th century. Was it extremely terrifying if that ever became a religion? I mean, maybe it is for some. So now we get into Singer and eugenics. So Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Singer is known as a pioneer for birth control, but most don't know her for the reasons she promoted birth control, which were strictly from a eugenic perspective. She was an active member of American Eugenics Society and even admitted that she gave a speech for the KKK and that she was so popular that they wanted her to come back. In 1932, she called for U.S. government to set aside farms and what she called open spaces where certain groups of people could be segregated from the rest of society. She proposed that, among others, the illiterate, the unemployed, and the poor should forcibly be kept in these areas until they developed better moral conduct. She also wrote a pamphlet called A License for Mothers to Have Babies. And she literally wanted a license to breed. She wanted people to go to the eugenics board and get a permit for every child, essentially saying that, like, what the outcome would be that, like, white people could have babies and brown people couldn't. So here's some really disturbing quotes from Singer that I was surprised to have found. So one is, birth control must lead ultimately to a cleaner race. We don't want the world to know that we're trying to exterminate the Negro population to create a race of thoroughbreds. Birth control is not merely an individual problem. It is not merely a national question. It is a concern of the whole wide world, the ultimate destiny of the human race. Before eugenists and others who are laboring for racial betterment can succeed, they must first clear the way for birth control. Like the advocates of birth control, the eugenicists, for instance, are seeking to assist the race toward the elimination of the unfit. Both are seeking a single end, but they lay emphasis upon different methods. Basically saying that birth control and scientific racism is one in one. They just take different methods. Today, eugenics is suggested to be the most diverse minds, is adequate. Okay, that was back then. I mean, now some people are surprisingly back into this theory. I don't know. It's just very disturbing. So with this, what I just wanted to get at was that at the population bomb, Ulrich came up with this idea that, like, we were going to run out of food and we were all going to die in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And that combined with the idea of eugenics and the idea of Planned Parenthood and birth control. So they were saying that we could manage a population by limiting the amount of babies that, like, brown people have. But instead, we got mass sterilization of women. So although Galton's emphasis was on the heritability of talent, he also believed character was hereditary. The idea that a man's moral choices might be determined by his heredity was shocking to the masses in the mid-19th century, but it wasn't unreasonable considering the truth behind natural selection. Since Vance didn't have free will, something must cause him to act a certain way, and that could only be his heredity. This assumption was to shape the eugenics movement in important ways. So basically, they were arguing that criminals breed criminals, and the taint is in the blood. A lot of authors came out saying that we needed to exterminate the horde of defectives. So before long, Americans were demanding the involuntary sterilization of those who seemed to be unfit. And the dubious honor of being the first state to legalize involuntary sterilization went to Indiana in 1907. Their justification was that criminal behavior was hereditary and that most crime could be limited simply by preventing criminals from reproducing. Here's a quote. Margaret Singer was all for it. I'm sure sterilization still happens today. It's very unfortunate and just a really bad way how religion, science combine together. So with this, I just wanted to show that this blue line, 90% of people back in the 60s and 70s were pro handing out birth control information. In 1972, a Supreme Court ruling allowed unmarried couples to now have contraception. In 1965, there's mass manufacturing of birth control started happening. Here's some notable Supreme Court cases. I want to talk about the 1992 Planned Parenthood versus Casey Act. And this basically, the undue burden section of it opened the door for abortion to be redefined by states. And that's why a lot of states right now are putting different abortion laws. I also wanted to point out the 2004 Hobby Lobby, and this is a landmark decision by the United States allowing closely held for-profit corporations to be exempt from the law and its owners religiously object. So basically saying that corporations, if they're religious, don't have to provide their workers with contraceptives, which is super messed up because half of the workers are probably women. Okay, so where are we today? In Trump's reality, aka we're in the age of scientific racism. I thought this was a really cool picture, resurgence of eugenics. Really, if you just if you Google eugenics, there's a million articles coming saying that, we're entering another period of this. So as if it wasn't already bad, 28 states require abortion clinics to hand out paper that has been proven to be incorrect. An example is Utah. There's a 72-hour waiting period. They refer to the unborn child as the fetus as an unborn child. They have a picture, and literally most of the information is saying 23.19% of the fetal development statements were inaccurate. That's crazy to me. Are we going back in time? In Arkansas, a new law. Well, this is all happening this year. A new law will let a husband sue a doctor to stop his wife from getting a particular type of abortion. It makes no exception for cases of spousal rape. So rape is usually done by people that you know. So this is actually super crazy. In Oklahoma, a bill was introduced at state capitol that would require the father of a fetus to sign off on abortion. So you need your husband's consent now. I mean, at least you can still get it if you have a rape, I guess. In Ohio, they banned abortion after 20 weeks. And as of right now, Republican replacement from Obamacare, they're trying to repeal Obamacare, and the new Trump care is trying to just drop all medical care, contraceptive care. It's just a whole lot of bullshit. I can't believe it's happening. So Trump era, boo, big boo. So just on my Facebook today, look, we have, as I said, the GOP ready to sacrifice maternity care. This fucking weirdo, he claims rape and incest are part of God's grand design, and victims can use the experience that getting a baby from rape is like beauty from ashes. Sick frame of thought. So here's Republicans debating over maternity health care, and of course, they're all men. And here, this is the worst one. Texas lawmaker jail time for abortions would make women more personally responsible for sex. Here, you're just punishing women for being women at this point. It's just the justification behind all these things is insane. I wish this could be a 30-minute presentation and I could explain more. So there is an upside. My IUD will last longer than his presidency. That's a plus side, 5 years. Other plus side, the Women's March, bigger than the turnout at his inauguration, which just fills me with hope. And here's the Steve Bannon article that I was talking to you about and I wanted to share with you. So basically, how to make women happy and invent the washing machine and the pill. I'll leave it to you to read, but so this guy is chief strategist, and this whole article is just really takes me back to the 60s, and this is probably very similar to what Sanger was preaching to the KKK. I just want to tie this all back and say that while Sanger, her motives weren't the best. It's a good instance of how religion and science, while it didn't come about through the best means or for the best purposes, ultimately it does serve a very important purpose now, and does allow women the right to contraceptives. And with Trump, we really are just gonna have to fight back and just pressure the government, and really hope that we don't turn into a fascist country. So with that, I leave you with my sources, and thank you so much. I know this went over. I wish I could go over 15 more minutes. I'm so sorry. Have a wonderful break, Professor, and I'll see you never again. Bye.